I woke up that Sunday to the smell of Windex and the sound of my mom's Hoover whirring like a low-flying helicopter outside my bedroom door. That meant one thing: house cleaning day. She always hit the floors early on Sundays, especially if we skipped Mass, which we did more often than not by 1978. The scent of pine sol mixed with that cold, glassy bite of Windex. Man, if I could bottle that smell, I'd wear it like cologne. That was the smell of home. The sun was already pouring through the curtains, those thick floral ones she'd sewn herself on the Singer machine in the dining room, lighting up the gold-speckled linoleum in the kitchen like a disco floor. Fitting, I guess, given what would happen later that day. But back then I had no idea what was coming. I just knew I was hungry. I shuffled into the kitchen wearing nothing but a pair of tighty-whities and mismatched tube socks, grabbed the cracked yellow cereal bowl with Bicentennial 1976, still barely visible on the rim, and filled it with frosted mini-wheats. I doused it in cold Meadow Gold milk, the kind that came in glass bottles, sweating on the counter like it had been through something, and plopped into my usual spot at the table. The old Zenith radio was playing Casey Kasem's American Top 40, and just as I started munching, Casey's smooth voice said, "Climbing to number 4 this week, the queen of disco, Donna Summer." And from the garage, like a reflex, my dad hollered, "Turn that crap off, she's gonna jinx the engine again." I couldn't help but laugh into my spoon. The man hated disco music, thought it was the downfall of America, or at least of General Motors. He'd blamed Donna Summer, Bee Gees, even Andy Gibb. Didn't matter. If it had a beat and glitter, he was out. But Donna was his favorite scapegoat. He was out there in the driveway, crouched under the hood of his 1972 Pontiac LeMans, his arms covered in oil, wearing that same old grease-stained tank top with the faded Cincinnati Reds logo on the front. That car was his baby, brown with a cream roof and a cracked dashboard that smelled like warm plastic and old cigarette butts. It was also dying. He'd never admit it, but you could hear it wheezing. "You play that song one more time and she won't start, I swear to God," he yelled, while Last Dance swelled in the background. Mom hollered back from inside, "It's the radio, Ed, not witchcraft." He didn't answer, just slammed the hood and muttered something about hip-wiggling music and no respect for engines. Meanwhile, Mom was folding towels in the living room while the sewing machine buzzed away, stitching new curtains she'd bought from Woolworth's. My little sister was hogging the avocado green rotary phone. The cord stretched halfway into the hall while she doodled Mrs. Leaf Garrett over and over in her Trapper Keeper. It was chaos. Beautiful, messy, domestic chaos. I headed back to my room, pulled on my favorite Star Wars t-shirt, the one where Chewie looked more like a fuzzy raisin than a Wookiee, and my Lee jeans with the knee patch from Sears, then tied my PF Flyers tight. I popped a cassette of Kiss Alive 2 into my hand-me-down tape recorder and turned it up just loud enough to drown out Donna. For about 3 minutes, I felt invincible. Dad was still trying to get the LeMans to turn over, banging the hood like he was arguing with an old friend. Mom promised we'd go to Burger Chef for lunch if the car survives the morning. That was incentive enough for me to pray silently. I could already taste the crinkle fries and see the little plastic toy inside the fun meal box. Usually some weird alien or spaceman that broke within 5 minutes, but we loved him anyway. The TV in the den, that old tube set with the wood grain finish and the bent coat hanger for an antenna, was murmuring reruns of The Electric Company between static flashes. Someone had left it on. Probably my cousin Randy, who spent the night and left early for Little League practice. His glove still sat on the porch swing, waiting. It was just one of those Sundays. You know the kind, where nothing special is supposed to happen, but everything feels oddly alive. Like even the burnt toast and dog hair on the carpet were part of some bigger memory being formed without you realizing it. Little did we know that by late afternoon, Dad's beloved LeMans would take its final breath, and he'd swear until his dying day that Donna Summer killed it. Ever had a Sunday like that? One with soap in the air, music on the radio, and something quietly falling apart in the driveway? Around 10:30 that morning, the whole neighborhood started to hum. Not from people, but from machines. Lawnmowers, sprinklers, old air conditioning units kicking on with a groan. A classic Midwest Sunday soundtrack. You could hear the neighbor, Mr. Fisher, revving up his riding mower. And across the street, Mrs. DeLuca was already watering her begonias in hot pink curlers and one of those terry cloth rompers, a cigarette dangling from her lips like a punctuation mark. Dad was still out there fighting with the LeMans, now sweating like a pig in a sauna. I watched him through the screen door as he pulled out the battery like it personally insulted him, then yelled up the street for my cousin Wayne. "Get your lazy tail over here and help me jump this beauty." Wayne, of course, came walking over in his Led Zeppelin tank top, eating a banana like it was a chore. I went outside to watch, sitting on the curb with my back against our mailbox, one of those cast iron ones shaped like a cowboy boot, which Mom thought was whimsical, and Dad said looked like junkyard art. I had my Viewmaster in hand, flipping through the Welcome Back Cotter reels I'd gotten at KB Toys for my birthday. Meanwhile, the two men grunted over jumper cables, while Donna Summer, now back on the radio, crooned MacArthur Park through the car's crusty speakers. That's when it happened. With the cables clipped and Wayne's old Datsun humming nearby, Dad turned the key. The LeMans coughed, sputtered, then belched out a puff of white smoke that smelled like burnt syrup and sadness. And then, nothing. Silence. The kind that falls after a joke lands flat at Thanksgiving. "Jesus, Mary, and disco balls," Dad snapped, throwing the keys onto the grass. "She did it again. She killed it." Wayne tried to hide his smirk, but I couldn't. I laughed out loud and Dad shot me a look like I'd just spit on the American flag. "Donna Summer ain't got no business being on my dashboard," he muttered, pacing like a coach after a bad call. Mom poked her head out the door with one of her famous ultimatums. "If that car doesn't move in 20 minutes, we're staying home and you're getting meatloaf." Wayne looked at me and whispered, "Oh no, not the loaf." We both cracked up. Even our dog Skipper, a wiry little mutt who looked like he was made from spare parts, whimpered in agreement. Everyone in the family knew Mom's meatloaf meant she was in no mood to go out. It was code for, "Don't push me." Dad stomped into the garage like a storm cloud with a wrench, probably planning to yell at the carburetor until it listened. I followed Wayne back across the street where his older brother, Kevin, was setting up the slip and slide on their front lawn, the yellow one with the hose that never stayed attached right. Kevin always wore cut-off shorts and a Van Halen headband, like he was ready for a concert that never came. We slid until we had grass burns and snot running down our faces, laughing like idiots. The sun was high by then, and the Kool-Aid stand the McIntyre twins had set up on the corner was drawing a crowd. They sold it out of washed-out mayonnaise jars, and I swear it tasted better that way. Everything tasted better in the 70s. Probably all the chemicals. Back at the house, I could hear the soundtrack of our life playing out in real time. The blender from the kitchen buzzing as Mom made instant mashed potatoes, just in case. The thump of my sister's Super Ball hitting the hallway walls. The soft click of the rotary phone being dialed again. And somewhere in the distance, the ice cream truck's warped version of Pop Goes the Weasel. But even with all that happening, I kept sneaking glances at the driveway. That Pontiac. It looked tired. Not just stalled, but weary. Like it had carried all it could. Groceries, baseball gear, our Christmas trees from Murphy's Mart, and about 1,000 bad moods from Dad. It was more than a car. It was furniture with wheels. I don't think Dad was mad because it broke. I think he was mad because it broke today. On a sunny day when the sky was perfect and Mom was willing to splurge on Burger Chef and even Dad might have ordered a shake. That kind of day didn't come often. And now, it was slipping through his fingers like coins down a sewer grate. Ever seen a grown man argue with an engine like it was his wife? That was my dad that day. His pride and joy gasping its last while disco played in the background like some cruel joke from the universe. And I started to wonder, if a car dies and Donna Summer's singing, is it really the engine's fault? By noon, the truth was unavoidable. The LeMans wasn't going anywhere. Dad sat on the porch steps like a defeated boxer, sweat-darkened tank top clinging to his back, holding a warm Schlitz beer he wasn't even drinking. The can just rested there in his hand, like it belonged to someone else. Inside, we heard Mom put away the purse she'd taken out in hopeful preparation for lunch. That sound, the soft clunk of the purse being dropped on the dining table, meant it was over. Burger Chef was dead, and the meatloaf was coming. It hit all of us differently. My sister locked herself in the bathroom with her 8-track player, blasting Sean Cassidy like she was in mourning. I went upstairs, sat on my bed, and stared at the water stains on the ceiling that looked like weird animals. A moose, a giraffe, and what I always swore was the flying nun. I could hear the fan in the hallway clacking with every slow rotation, and the smell of ketchup and onions began seeping up the stairs. The scent of meatloaf always made me think of sick days and substitute teachers. Downstairs, Mom moved around the kitchen like a silent movie star in a polyester apron, heating up bird's eye peas, opening the can of Jolly Green Giant corn, and slicing white bread from the sunbeam loaf like it was punishment. The TV in the background played reruns of Hee Haw, which only made the afternoon feel even more like an outtake from someone else's life. I sat at the table around 12:30, fork in hand, meatloaf on plate, wondering how a perfectly good Sunday had turned into this. Dad finally came in and sat down, mumbling something about needing a new alternator and maybe a new family. Mom ignored him completely and asked me if I had finished my book report on where the red fern grows. I lied and said yes. I hadn't even started. I was too distracted by life lately. And by the way, Julie Thompson had started wearing Donna Bell lip smacker in class, which made her smell like a cherry snow cone. Dad ate in silence, which was rare. Usually he'd bark at the TV or tell some inappropriate joke about Bob Hope or Spiro Agnew. But that day he just stared at the meatloaf like it had personally offended him. Midway through the meal, the song came back. Last Dance again. The radio in the garage still playing, maybe from a stuck button. That song was haunting us now. Donna Summer's voice wafted in like a ghost in platform heels. And that's when he snapped. "That's it!" Dad yelled, slamming his fork down so hard it bounced. "That song has played every damn time this car's stalled in the last 6 months. I don't care what anyone says. That woman's voice carries bad vibes." Mom rolled her eyes. "Ed, the only bad vibe in this house is coming from your attitude." My sister, now back at the table with wet bangs and a sour face, added, "Maybe the car's just old, like your jokes." I actually covered my mouth to hide the laugh. Dad didn't even flinch. He just muttered, "I swear, if Donna Summer comes on again, I'm burning that radio to the ground." After lunch, I went out to the garage just to poke around. The LeMans sat there like an elephant that had laid down and refused to get up. The fuzzy dice still hung from the rearview mirror. The foam Braun One Dad finger from last Father's Day was wilted and dusty on the dashboard. I climbed in the passenger seat just to sit and think. The seat was warm from the sun and smelled like vinyl, sweat, and old fries. I found a Lifesavers wrapper between the cushions, probably mine from some trip to the drive-in last fall. I remembered sitting back there with a blanket watching Smokey and the Bandit, while Dad snored in the driver's seat and Mom read a Reader's Digest. That car had been everything. A spaceship, a clubhouse, a war tank when we played pretend in the driveway. Now it was a coffin for a Sunday that never got off the ground. Just then, Wayne rode by on his banana seat Schwinn, popped a wheelie and shouted, "LeMans still dead?" I nodded. He laughed and kept riding, his baseball cards clipped to the spokes making that flapping sound like a mini motorcycle. I stayed in the garage for a while, watching dust float through the sunlight beams, listening to the soft static between songs on the radio. And then, just like that, the first notes of Last Dance came on again. I swear I froze. Dad from inside the house bellowed, "Oh, come on!" followed by the unmistakable crash of something. Maybe a dish, maybe his patience. And I smiled, because even in disappointment, even in broken engines and overcooked meatloaf, even in missed lunches and disco paranoia, that day was real. It was loud. It was alive. And man, I'd take that over silence any day. Around 2 p.m., Dad decided he wasn't going to let the car win. Not today. He came out of the house like a man with a mission. Sleeves rolled up, Sears Craftsman toolbox in one hand, and a vengeance that smelled like sweat, motor oil, and burnt gravy. He didn't say a word, just nodded to himself like he'd solved a riddle only he understood. Mom stood at the window with a glass of Tang, watching him like she always did when he was about to do something dumb and masculine. The kind of stare that said, "I'll be here when you fail." She didn't say it, but her eyebrows did. I followed him into the driveway like a loyal soldier. He opened the hood of the LeMans with a loud creak, then wiped his forehead with a Viva paper towel that disintegrated mid-wipe. "Damn things are softer than my sister's perfume," he muttered, tossing it aside and reaching deep into the engine block like he was trying to wring its neck. He made me hand him tools, the real ones, not those cheap ones from the gas station. So I crouched down and opened his metal red toolbox, the one with peeling STP and Valvoline stickers, and passed him a wrench that probably weighed more than my dog. While he worked, the neighborhood started to settle into that weird Sunday lull. You know the one. Not quite nap time, not quite dinner time, just the in-between, when reruns of The Love Boat started playing, and the light in the living room turned golden. I could hear the sound of a baseball game drifting from Mr. Fisher's garage radio. The Cincinnati Reds versus the Phillies, I think. Tony Perez had just hit a double. The smell of grease mixed with the lingering odor of meatloaf and lemon pledge in the air. Inside, my sister was trying on different outfits for school the next day. I could see her reflection in her trifold vanity mirror with the light-up bulbs, pretending she was on solid gold. And upstairs, my bedroom window rattled every few seconds from the box fan on the sill, threatening to give up just like the LeMans. Then Dad let out a grunt, not one of pain, but of small victory. "All right," he said. "Try it now." I didn't know if he was talking to me or the universe, but I ran inside to get Mom. She came out wiping her hands on her apron with little daisies and stood behind him. He turned the key. Click. Then a groan. Then a sad little whimper from the engine. Then silence. Dad didn't yell this time. He just stood there, staring into the open hood like he expected it to whisper a secret. "That's it," he said quietly. "She's gone." Not like a mechanic talking about a car. Like a man talking about someone he'd known for years. And I guess he had. He walked away without slamming the hood, which was even scarier than if he had. Mom followed him inside, but not before squeezing his shoulder the way she used to do when he was laid off in '74 and pretended everything was fine. I stayed out there alone with the LeMans. The afternoon sun was turning orange, and the shadows were getting longer, stretching across the driveway like time itself was reaching out to collect something it left behind. I looked at the car's front grille, dented from when I rode my big wheel into it 2 summers ago, and noticed the faint outline of where the bumper sticker used to be. "Honk if you love 'em" radio. I climbed onto the hood, lying back with my arms behind my head, staring at the fading sky. From this angle, the roof of the LeMans framed the clouds like a movie screen. I remembered riding in that car on 4th of July nights, watching fireworks through the windshield while Dad told me how he almost bought a Plymouth Barracuda instead. But Pontiac had better guts. A breeze picked up, and for a second it carried the faintest sound of a song from the neighbor's window. Yep, Donna Summer. Again. Heaven knows. I swear that car sighed, and I said it out loud, to no one but the air. "You win, Donna. You win." Because sometimes that's what life is. A car that won't start, a song that won't stop, and a Sunday that turns into a ghost. By 5:30, the day had slipped into that soft, syrupy phase where shadows stretched across the grass like sleepy cats and every sound felt rounder, slower. Mom lit one of those Avon candles shaped like a birdcage, and the scent of fake gardenia floated through the house. The TV was still on, playing Chips reruns, and the clink of dinner plates being put away echoed gently in the background. Dad hadn't said a word since the failed resurrection of the LeMans. He just sat at the kitchen table, slowly peeling the label off another Pabst Blue Ribbon bottle, his fingers twitching like he was trying to erase the day. Mom tried to offer him some Spumoni ice cream we still had in the freezer from Easter, but he just shook his head. Even dessert couldn't fix a wounded pride. Meanwhile, I sat on the carpet in the living room, surrounded by my Hot Wheels collection, lining them up like a traffic jam on the shag. I kept the little yellow Pontiac GTO at the back of the line. It felt wrong to put it in front, like I was pretending something still had power that didn't anymore. My sister, now in her 3rd outfit of the afternoon, came downstairs in her Disco Sucks t-shirt, trying to annoy Dad. She plopped down next to me and said, "Maybe next time he'll get a station wagon like a normal person." I shot her a look, even though I wouldn't admit it out loud, that LeMans meant something to me. It had been there for every road trip, every emergency dentist visit, every Christmas tree haul. That car was a member of the family. Then the doorbell rang. It was Kevin from across the street, holding a boom box the size of a microwave. "Want to ride over to the school parking lot?" he asked. "Couple guys are bringing out their skateboards and someone's got a 6-pack of Jolt Cola." I looked at Dad, who barely glanced up. "Go on," he said. "Don't let the car ruin your day, too." I threw on my windbreaker with the rainbow stripes, grabbed my fiberglass skateboard and followed Kevin out the door. As we walked past the garage, I reached out and touched the LeMans one last time. Just a light tap on the hood, like saying goodbye to a pet that got too old to run. We skated down the sidewalk under a sky that was turning the color of orange sherbet, the air cool and full of sprinkler mist. We passed by Mrs. DeLuca again, now on her 2nd cigarette, and Mr. Fisher's garage, still playing the post-game wrap-up. "Reds win," the announcer said. "Perez with the walk-off." Glory days, folks. At the school parking lot, about 8 of us gathered. Kevin set the boombox on the curb, and someone popped in a mixtape. First it was Boston, then Rock Lobster, and then Donna Summer. Again. Last Dance. I swear that song was following me. I looked at Kevin. Turn it off before my dad senses it and explodes. He laughed. Man, she's everywhere this weekend. Must be a sign. I thought for a second. Or maybe a curse. But the truth was, the more I heard it, the more it stuck. That voice, those strings, that weird tempo shift halfway through. It wasn't bad. I wasn't going to tell Dad, but part of me liked it. We rode around until the boombox's batteries gave out. Then we just sat, leaned back on our boards talking about nothing. Stuff like whether Atari was ever going to come out with a baseball game, or how long it would take before Star Wars got a sequel. We made dumb bets about how many frogs we'd see in the creek by Friday, and I remember looking up at the sky, full of stars that night, and thinking, one day this'll all be gone. The cars, the boomboxes, the meatloaf threats, the feeling of being small but whole, the way Sundays could go from boring to legendary without warning. I didn't know then how often I'd think about that day, how Last Dance would make me smile someday instead of cringe, how the smell of oil and Windex could crack my heart open like a photo album with no pictures. Back home, the porch light was on. Mom had set out a glass of milk, and one of those stale Hydrox cookies she always bought instead of Oreos to save a nickel. Dad was asleep in the recliner, arms crossed, the TV still buzzing with static. The LeMans sat quiet in the dark, like a retired hero, and I tiptoed past it, like you do when something's resting. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling again, the moose and giraffe stains barely visible in the moonlight. The fan clacked its slow rhythm, and somewhere in the house, a floorboard creaked with that comforting groan that only old houses know how to make. The kind that says, I've seen your worst and I'm still standing. Down the hall, Dad's snores rumbled in sync with the TV's white noise. Mom had draped a blanket over him and turned the sound down to a whisper, one of her quiet, wordless acts of love. I could still smell the faint afterglow of dinner. Onions, pledge, and motor grease. A very specific kind of comfort food for the soul. My skateboard leaned against the wall near my closet, the wheels still dusty from the school lot. On my nightstand, a half-eaten bit o' honey sat next to my copy of Mad Magazine, its cover folded back where I'd left off. Something about disco fever. Even the jokes couldn't escape it back then. I reached over and turned on my GE flip-clock radio, its red digits glowing like sleepy eyes. I kept the volume low so Mom wouldn't yell. The DJ on the local FM station, I think it was WQIO 93.3, was doing a Ladies of the Late Night segment. Coming up next, he said. You guessed it, Donna Summer. And there it was. Last Dance. Again. I could have changed the station. I could have turned it off. But I didn't. I just lay there and listened. Really listened. The slow, sentimental intro. That gentle piano. The way it built into something big, almost ridiculous. Like life itself. It hit me then. Maybe that song wasn't a curse. Maybe it was just the perfect soundtrack for a Sunday that didn't go the way we planned. A little bit sad. A little bit wild. A little too much. I thought about Dad, and how the LeMans had taken us to Niagara Falls, to Kings Island, to 100 other places that now lived only in snapshots and brain corners. How that car had been the setting for some of my biggest small moments. Backseat naps, drive-in movies, rainy day arguments, late-night ice cream runs when Mom craved marshmallow topping. And I thought about how angry he got when it died. Not just because it broke, but because it marked the end of something. Something mechanical, sure, but also something emotional. A car like that wasn't just metal. It was memory. I closed my eyes and let the song play out. The tempo picked up. Donna belted the chorus, and for a second, I imagined the LeMans back on the road. Chrome shining, tires spinning. Dad's arm out the window, tapping the roof like he always did when he was in a good mood. Last dance. Last chance for love. It wasn't love exactly, but it was a kind of farewell. To a car, to a Sunday, to a version of us that would never ride together again quite the same way. And as the final notes faded into the hiss of static, I whispered, "Good night, LeMans." Then I added, without even meaning to, "Good night, Donna." Because yeah, maybe Dad was wrong. Or maybe he just needed someone to blame. But that day, April 30th, 1978, she was everywhere. And somehow, she made it unforgettable.